having a book fair going on, and I arrived thinking there might be a copy of the Bhagavad Gita here. And I think they're all at the book fair, but that's okay, because fortunately the slokas that I wanted to read, I actually printed on some notes, and so we can proceed without any difficulty whatsoever. As devotees, we hear a lot about renunciation. And a lot of what we hear about renunciation is not particularly what we want to hear. Give up this, let go of that, don't get possessed by your desires for possession. It doesn't seem fair, because our social conditioning is such that, throughout our lives, we are conditioned to seek the goodies that society has to offer us, and it has nothing to do with renunciation. We're encouraged to strive for fame, fortune, power, social status, and of course, all of the wonderful, attractive items that we can acquire along the way if we're successful in our pursuits. And then one day, we walk into a program at Ananda, and someone is telling us, no, wait a minute, your worldly ambitions are not going to bring you lasting happiness. In fact, they're the source of your suffering. And so what you have to do if you want to experience true joy is practice non-attachment. Well, I wasn't really thrilled when I first heard that. I was having a very nice worldly life and thought I was on the right track. And then, of course, we also hear a lot about tapasya, self-discipline, and that is also not necessarily a topic that is one of our favorites. Now, in the Bhagavad Gita, renunciation is a major theme. In fact, Krishna speaks of it in virtually every chapter. And he's not just talking about renunciation of material things. He explains to Arjuna that it's impossible to achieve freedom, soul freedom, without inner renunciation. And this is what he says. In chapter 5, verse 12, the God-united yogi, relinquishing attachments to the fruits of action, attains unshakable inner peace. That person, however, who does not direct his energies toward union with God is ruled by desires. Attached to the fruits of action, he lives in bondage. Now, it takes a lot of living and a lot of experience on that up and down roller coaster to realize that what Krishna is saying is absolutely correct. That until we are able to divorce ourselves from the results, the fruits of our actions, we're going to be living in an outward manner, and it is going to lead us essentially to bondage. Bondage meaning that there will always be disappointment when even we achieve pleasure and temporary happiness along the way. And he continues in verse 13 of the same chapter. When once the embodied soul has controlled the senses and mentally releasing every attachment remains blissful and secure in the city of 9 gates, he himself no longer acts, nor does he impose action on others. My goodness, what does that mean? It's confusing. I mean, how can we not act when every move that we make, even to lift a finger, is a form of activity. So what does Krishna mean by this? What he means is that whatever I do, I meaning the egoic I, whatever the results of that doing is, not really something that I have done. He's saying God is the doer, and that he is acting through me, that God is acting through me, and that therefore I have to be in tune with his will, and if I am not, I'm going to experience the bondage that Krishna was talking about in that previous shloka. So now it gets even more complicated, doesn't it? Because I just read to you 2 slokas from the Bhagavad Gita. I actually did it, did I not? I was the one, I'm standing up here. So the question is, was I the one doing the talking? Were those my words, or was that God talking through me? Well, I have to be very honest. I mean, if it was God talking through me in all situations, that's going to be a problem, because I think he's smarter than what he appears to be a lot of the time if he's depending on me to reflect, the kind of perfection that he is. So, it's a difficult situation. Of course, we know intellectually he's the doer. I can't even lift a finger without the energy that God enables me to have. But at the same time, I can get myself in a lot of trouble, and if it's him acting through me, well, it gets complicated. And this is a very difficult teaching. It's difficult because it goes against the grain of how we like to perceive ourselves. I like to perceive myself as self-sufficient, as in control, at least to some degree. And if he is the doer, then there's another problem with all of that, which I'm not particularly thrilled about, because he's acting through me, and I get the karma. Whatever happens, even though supposedly it's God acting through me, I'm the one that gets to deal with the karma from that experience. So, it's a difficult teaching, and sometimes it doesn't seem entirely fair. So, let's see if we can unravel this a little bit. First off, what is the city of 9 gates that Krishna referred to in that previous verse? Well, on page 235, if I have a book right here, in Swamiji's commentary, he notes that the city is the human body. And the 9 gates are the 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 nostrils, 2 organs of excretion, and the mouth. The 9 gates, the sensory gates. And what Krishna is saying is that the yogi, the true yogi, withdraws from those sensory gates into soul consciousness. That's what the teaching is. That's what we're trying to realize ourselves, is that that's where we have to go. Otherwise, we're just sort of out there and we're vulnerable. And what Swami says is, think of the turtle. The turtle withdraws into its center, into his protective shell, whenever there's the potential of an enemy around. Well, the enemy for us is our own desires, worldly desires, attachments, habits, the lure of ego-mindedness. Ego-mindedness is what we're striving to overcome. And we have a choice. We always have a choice. We can live in delusion, or we can live with higher awareness. How is that? God has given us free will. And even though He is the doer, in the greater sense of the word, He does not intervene. That free choice is always ours for better or worse. It's His dream, but the way He set that dream up, the rules of it, are that He cannot interfere with the power of free choice that He has given us. He can whisper to us in meditation. He can whisper into our thoughts that maybe it's a good idea to think of behaving wisely and kindly. But if I decide to cheat or lie or steal, He's not going to interfere. And that's where the responsibility comes in, this word responsibility for the karma that comes to me. One of my very favorite quotes of Swami Kriyananda's is he said, "Kriyananda is an event for which I am responsible." And that's really where we are. That's who we are. We are an event, and we are responsible for all of the things that impact that event, even though God is the doer. Swamiji taught us that right action leads us to right attitudes. And attitude is just so important. But we always have to be aware, even when we're doing good things, because the ego is always out there trying to exert itself. And it can do that even when we're doing wonderful things on the outside. We can do them with an attitude of self-righteousness, or we can be very proud of who we are. And when we are, we're in our ego. We are not surrendering ego as we need to do. Krishna goes on, verse 14 of that chapter 5. It is not God, the sovereign self, who creates in mankind the consciousness of acting in this world. God neither causes people to act nor entangles them in the consequences of their actions. It is Maya, the cosmic illusion, which acts through them. Well now, does that mean that God is trying to shift the blame for our misdeeds? I mean, after all, He's the one who created Maya. That's part of His dream too. And somehow that doesn't seem quite fair either, because He isn't affected by karma, and we are. We get to be the ones that have to deal with it. Yogananda would often argue with God over things like this. And he said, it's just fine for us to do the same thing. God, you did this through me. It may have been my mistake, but you're the one that created Maya in the first place, and the very least you can do is help me out of this mess. And Master said, God likes that kind of response. It shows the strength of character. And strength of character, of course, assuming that we are actually sincere about not making, that same mistake again. And it's also important as an attitude because it relieves us of the feeling of personal guilt. Personal guilt, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm so guilty about that. Master said, never be that way. That there's just an affirmation of negativity there that is absolutely counterproductive. He said, the worst sin that we can commit is calling ourselves a sinner. And he would admonish his disciples repeatedly never affirm your own weakness, your sense of unworthiness, or any failure. Give it to God. In this lifetime, we have landed in a place of duality that just delivers disappointments to us, to everyone. It's just the way life is when we're engaged in that outside world. And we can't ignore that. I know that very well, because even though this is all part of God's dream, it has its own reality, doesn't it? And it's a very magnetic reality. It may be just a figment of that dream, but for us, it's something that we have to deal with on a daily basis. The only way to free yourself from that reality is to surrender the ego to God. Not easy to do, but with an awareness, it becomes easier to catch yourself all the time. This I, me, mine, the I that is the ego, that's a figment of our imagination too. And we can release it. We can be more self-offering, more self-forgetful in everything that we do. And when we do, as Krishna guarantees, God will permeate us with a bliss that is out of this world.